What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Game Dev Unchained, another game development podcast about game developers and the lifestyle thereof. I am your host, Brandon Pham, and with me, I have two special guests, Dino and Tadej. How you guys doing?
Hello.
Good, all good. You. How's it going?
Good. This is a part of the podcast where I kind of ask you guys to introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers out there of who you are, where you at, where you heading.
Okay, yeah. So my name is Dino Patti. I have been working professionally with tech the last 23 years. I've been professional in games the last 20 years. I'm probably best known for my influence in Playdead, which I founded and I ran for almost 10 years. Since then, I created two companies. I created a company called Jumpship, which we actually sold last year to Thunderful, and I also created Coherence.
Awesome. Tadej.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Tadej Gregorcic. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Coherence. My background is I started in the 90s in the European demo scene, doing low-level code, engine programming, graphics, all sorts of stuff. And then I went on to co-found a couple of companies in games and in back-end software. I had a startup called SurePhone that dealt with real-time technology, games, and telephony that we sold to a telco back in the day. And now we're here. I love making products. I love doing tech.
Awesome. Obviously, you guys are serial studio builders, which is a very unique, valuable skill. Can you guys kind of talk about your experience from the first studios you guys built to where you guys are now and the differences and challenges that or things that are getting easier? A little bit of history about that.
I can start again. So with Playdead, I was 26 when I started it, and I was extremely what would you say, inexperienced in building companies. And I think it was more like I did what was needed. I never thought of it that I was an entrepreneur. I was just doing all the shit that needed to get done. Oh, can I say that?
Oh yeah. All day.
Good. And it was, I was thought about it as like, the big driver's license, you just get thrown out into something. We got a bit of cash in the beginning. We needed more work to go faster. Then I hired some people because that's how made things go faster. Then we needed more money because, when you start having people, you need more money. And then I kind of slowly got into all of it, and everything was a learning step. Everything was me banging my head towards the wall a couple of times, reading up, learning from people, asking around. That was kind of my everything was just had to be invented from scratch. I felt. I mean, people with business educations probably have learned a lot of those things, but I didn't come from business, so it was very new to me. I learned to love it through the whole process. I was an engineer, and I loved being a coder before that, and I loved hacking, opening machines, and finding out kind of figuring out how computer works. And with this, I kind of find out it's the same with humans. Not that you can open up humans legally, but more that you can kind of find out what make humans tick and manage that and put teams together and hire and all of that. And of course, you ask how it's different now. I think the first time you do it is clearly the hardest because everything is new. The second and third time is just all about building on that experience. And I think not relying too much on it, but kind of standing on you usually say stand on the shoulders of giants, but you kind of have to look at all that you learned and then learn from that point on, because it's new people, it's new processes. And I also did this stupid thing that I did 2 game companies and then I jumped to tech, and I kind of thought that would be the same. And in many ways, I kind of started from the very, very beginning. It was in games, I felt I was known and I could pull a lot of that experience, and suddenly going to tech, it was a lot of things was new again. It was like raising funds felt like starting from scratch. The whole business model starting from scratch. Games is very set in the ways you do business in many ways. Where going to do technology was like very new for me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm just rambling on. Was that an answer to your question?
No. I mean, today, was the experience similar to yours, or was there any subtle differences that you felt from your first studio to where you are now?
For sure. And something that Dino said just now about having the feeling that you need to build everything from scratch, that really speaks to me, because, I'm a coder. I'm from the demo scene. I started making, game engines and graphics engines and all sorts of stuff, everything from scratch. So back in the day, we did it, with x86 assembly. We did it with C, and we built all these things. And it took a real effort to lay the foundations to build anything that could be called a game at some point. And I really loved doing that. And I did that for a long time, even later when I started my own company. All the software and the clients we built everything from scratch. But we slowly learned to build on the foundations of what's already there. And then at some point, engines like Unity and Unreal started becoming a reality. And I think, for me as a coder in the beginning, it was really a matter of kind of swallowing my pride, actually using somebody else's engine to work on something. But then you slowly discover that what you really care about is the end product. And it doesn't matter if you build the foundations, you're never going to be able to catch up with somebody who's totally focused on this. And slowly but surely, I think this reality is also one of the things that's behind the inspiration of Coherence. Why build it yourself if somebody else can do it better, and you can benefit from all that deep experience and knowledge and effort put into it. So I also learned a lot from past companies, from working with big games and clients from different industries, building systems and games with hundreds of millions of users, and learning about scale, and also not only about scale and how to do it technically, but how to do it, what do you have to do socially to get that actually done? Because it's not only about getting machines to work together, it's also about working with people to make sure that these things get the way they should be.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of things you guys are speaking to is like, as game developers, you talk to any studio founders, they really rarely go to business school. We kind of learn on the fly. I mean, we emphasize a lot of our knowledge into the craft, and then find ourselves in definitely situations that we have to upgrade, or just for the necessity to kind of make our projects come to life. And from all the interviews, from everyone I talk to, that's usually how it happens, kind of learning by failing. And it's exciting, and I think that's one of the greatest achievements from the game industry, is just that there's just so much innovation because we don't do things by the norm. Obviously, building up studios and the experiences that you guys gone through, there's so much elements to it. How did you guys balance when building up these studios to kind of leverage your craft, but also take up these responsibilities of maintaining a studio, which I think often founders are finding themselves sacrificing more on the creative side and managing rather than actually rolling up their sleeves and putting in the time to deliver that first project.
So you're talking about like the balance you have in the company between your own craft and managing it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, for my sake, I kind of threw it out the window really early. I remember in Limbo, I was kind of look a bit for some engines I could build on to build the tech. I just feel like the first coders we got was so much better. And I felt like, either I could kind of keep up with that but I felt there was so much on my chair already, like early on. There was so much, like just finding funding and new people and making the plans. And we had nothing to begin with. And like being the first ones that are coming, like you're always behind on everything.
Yeah.
You're never in front, I feel. So so for my sake, I felt it was more important just to like be the glue in the company, kind of look and identify what was missing, and then kind of work on that. It was a bit sad, like at least for 10 years since I started, maybe a bit less, 8 years, I was still coding at home, like coding small projects and like kind of missing it a lot and thinking a lot about how to get back to it.
Yeah.
And I think after 10 years, I was kind of just saying, okay, this is not my path in life anymore. I spent more time professionally kind of leading and doing CEO related stuff.
Yeah.
Too much. Again, I do that because I don't know what it is like you're doing, right? But doing everything else that's needed for the company to run, to create culture, to hire people, to get funding, to form a plan and a vision, and and to be honest, be everywhere, because like before you get your marketing person, you need to sit down and write text before you before you get hired a certain place. You need to do it yourself, right? So yeah.
But today, like I know the biggest
sorry.
Well, I mean, one of the biggest I mean, this applies to both of you. One of the biggest challenges as an engineer, especially when you're starting a project from scratch, is building off a foundation rather than building the foundation from scratch. There's definitely a period where I felt, Unreal and Unity didn't have as much, traction as now. I mean, it was during Gears of War days, everybody was using it. And then there was a period during PS4 where like everybody was relying on their own internal engine, like big AAA as well as indie. And then it kind of returned back, as development cost was just unbearable, right? What was your journey exactly where you felt like, the end product, you were kind of speaking to it before, is the final ideation, is what's most important? I mean, what was that moment exactly where you're like, what, these are fine. My value can be more unique, right? I don't have to recreate the wheel. What was that exact timing? What made you decide that?
It's a good question. I think, when you're building up something of your own, and at the same time you see this alternative out there or several alternatives, and you're building it, and then you start building something creative on top of the technology that you have built, right? And as you're doing that, you're of course exposed to news and people are telling you like all the features that all these other technologies have, and slowly you're noticing that, okay, if I try to catch up with all this, I better focus on this and make this my business. So building the tech itself, not what I'm building on top of it. So of course, there are edge cases and there are special circumstances where that's totally okay, and a lot of people do that fantastically well. But for me personally, there was just this moment where I saw that, all right, let me try this tool out. In particular, Unity back then. I think it was like when Unity 1.1, 1.5 or something was out there. It was like a year or two after they had launched, and I saw, okay, it's pretty cool. I thought this technology was pretty cool, and then I decided I'll give it a shot, and it really helped. And I felt that in the following years, what I was able to do far surpassed what I would have been able to do with had I been also focusing on the tech itself. And it's a similar thing that, I mean, now with Coherence, we're going back. So we're building the tech from the ground up, everything, the whole stack we built ourselves. And now we're the guys who are trying to enable this for other people, right? And to come back to just quickly to your previous question, because I thought of this as well. You know, like for Dino, you said that for you it was a few years ago, like maybe many years ago, that you decided, okay, I'm going to focus on these things instead, not do the coding and stuff. For me, it's much more recent or immediate because I still do quite a lot of coding, but we both realized that the team we're building is far better than we are, and in so many things, and then leveraging that. But at the same time, Brandon, you asked about your craft, our craft. I think one of the ways we try to satisfy that is, you know, doing internal game jams with our own tech to get that creative thing out. Also, we have a lot of, you know, if we look at our coworkers, most of them are game developers, so they all want to make games as well, but we're making tech. So in order to get that creativity out, we also do things like game jamming that helps, you know, make the product better in the end. Yeah, I just wanted to say that realizing that surrounding yourself with people that are better than you, also at very specific things, is the way to go if you want to grow anywhere and not become a bottleneck in the whole process.
Yeah. One last question. I definitely want to jump to Coherence and learn more about that. Just to kind of end this line of questioning. So, you know, from the first indie project that you guys made in your relative studios, you know, building the studios from scratch, what did you guys learn from success from those first projects and first studios, and subsequently apply to what you guys have now? You know, being a serial studio creators, I'm sure there was a lot of lessons learned from each place of your careers, right?
So you ask what we learned from success?
Yeah. From your first studio to now, you guys kind of went through different stages, right? Obviously, the first one was all kind of crazy. You guys kind of learning on as you go. Second one, you had more confidence. Third one, so on and so forth. What were the things that you were able to carry over and improve on, so that when you were hitting the ground running, you weren't so much in in a confused state?
I mean, for me, it was a lot about hiring. Mm-hmm. I think hiring is really, really tough. And I learned that the best people you can have the skill of intrinsic motivation. Mm-hmm. And especially these online days, I think is really important. If you don't have that, it's so hard. You cannot, force or guide or lead people that want something else or not motivated to do something.
Yeah.
And especially in this online world where no coherence is remote, you don't see people every day. We see people every day, but we don't follow them all hours of the day. And just knowing and feeling, and of course, that they are motivated intrinsically. Obviously, there's plans, and we have a producer, and you can do stuff to check output, but I still feel that the true quality and like work out of the extraordinary is when people are motivated by themselves. Like, one thing is telling them to do a job and they do it, but another thing is that you tell them something, they go back, they research it, they find out a better way of doing it. Yep. And coming back with something that was better than you asked for, because they kind of, we just hired a marketing person for the team, and I love that I know this person is digging deep into the subject. Yeah. I would not be able to say all the details of what this work entails. I mean, I can guide, and we can come up with a direction together, but I cannot come up with every small step. And I think I learned that is really important, and I did that failure many times. But the fun thing is, your question was what I learned of success. But I feel that even though Playdate was successful, I still learned more of all the mini failures, like all of the times where something didn't work and I banged the head towards a wall. It's where I learned the most. And I sit down and when I fail, I always try to figure out why and what I can improve. Where sometimes I feel with success, you kind of attribute the wrong things to your success, which is maybe not the right thing, and you actually don't know. There's no way of testing it.
Yeah. Hindsight is 2020, right? So you're always your brain has a way of making successes feel like it was all meant to be, or you planned for it, but it's sometimes it goes. It's just the way it turns out. And I was gonna say the same about failure, because one of the things that I saw not early enough was that we're in an industry that's really nice. So there's a lot of people willing to help. There's a lot of advice out there. People are not as competitive in the same way as in different industries. So we're not trying to hide on as much as in other industries. And there's a lot of advice that comes people's ways. Also, you end up reading business books. You end up reading books about startups and building studios and stuff like that. And often, I remember early on feeling that, but my example is very different. My example is special. It doesn't apply to what these guys are saying. But then later, I learned that. Yeah, it does. Very often, a lot of these things can be generalized to a certain extent. If you take it with a grain of salt, you can still benefit from the advice. And one of those is to really focus on what you're trying to achieve.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's a people business. The solutions and problems are the same. It's people. And finding the right people to kind of exponentially expand on an idea is so valuable. I do want to circle back later to the remote and versus in-office thing later. But I do want to talk and learn more about coherence. So how did this idea come about?
So yeah. I mean, I was actually in the middle of jump ship. But I remember we went to a size and I hired some people around me at that studio, so I was not so heavily loaded. And by random chance, I ran into an old friend, David Helgerson from Unity, and we kind of had the same thought about the industry. And I can remember I said to him, I think Unity, they got too little credit. Unity has just changed the gaming space so much, and everybody, they say the mobile was a huge boom, but the mobile would never have been that boom without Unity, because without the content, it would not have kind of exploded so much as it did. And I don't know, we just went down a path of like thinking about what's the next thing for games. What was it that Unity did? And obviously what Unity did was commoditizing a network engine, and they made it super, super easy to make games for even the small developers. And I know slowly the thought goes went to what's next for games, and obviously it's multiplayer, right? Everything needs to get more real time. Every popular game has some real time components. Interaction with other people is what you often remember from games. So the first thesis was just that if we can make it extremely easy to make a multiplayer game, we would lower the barrier entry, and we would thereby also create a new revolution within games again. And that was kind of the starting point. Not long after we kind of got Today involved, and rest is history.
Yeah, for me, as I said before, it's recognizing what this kind of what easy to use tools can do for creators. The magical thing, like imagining. So if you look at the multiplayer space now, where are we? Multiplayer is still very hard. People are afraid of it. Like we talk to streamers like you. We talk to game jammers. We talk to everybody, and people are afraid of multiplayer. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we're very passionate about is kind of removing that fear. And I think we've done it. And we've done a couple of game jams where people who had never made multiplayer games before were now able to do it in a weekend, which I think is pretty amazing. And then you can see, all the different places people are coming from creatively, and what they can achieve if you just give them the right tool set to do it. And so we looked at the multiplayer space. We looked at everything from session-based games to big MMOs, and first of all, what are they like tech-wise? What are the common denominators here? And also, like, what things are being done well, and what things are being done this way just because they have always been done this way. And for the former, we of course adopted all the optimization techniques, everything like it's the 90s, like bandwidth is super small, and really came up with an engine that you can build anything on. And for the latter, we saw that in the whole process of making a multiplayer game, there can be amazing innovation. and we really, the benefit of us building it from the ground up is that we now came with an engine and a tool set that is both powerful enough to build an MMO, and easy to use enough to build, a simple mobile multiplayer game or a multiplayer game for any platform.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely speak to that. I mean, I mostly develop, in the AAA space, worked on several multiplayer projects. I come from an environment art background, so I'm used to making levels for both single player and multiplayer. But that side is beyond that, is mystery and magic to me. I was like, I don't know or understand. It's not the first tutorial I even open when I try to learn an engine like Unreal or Unity. It doesn't seem reachable, right? There's no magic button that allows me to kind of just get it. And, beyond that, the optimization to kind of make it work. There's definitely like a huge development. Sorry, real quick.
Sorry. I wanted to jump off that.
Yeah.
I just said, well, imagine that solo developer. If you look at like some creative talent as Lucas Pope, that did Papers, Please. He's done so many crazy, amazing games. He has such an amazing brain. It's always new ways of interaction. I would love to see somebody like him or a small team experiment. I feel like right now it's only the bigger companies that have enough manpower to build their own network stack, that build games, and the games that come out of it are so boring. I mean, Ubisoft games, sorry to say, they're so boring. The multiplayer parts are so boring. I really want to see small, medium companies thrive here. And an example I always give is that today mentioned it a bit, but that 15 years ago, people would reject Unity. They would build their own stack. They would not like rely on something else. But if you ask people today, who would build their own engine first? And I think it's the same with network tech. Why would you in 3-5 years build your own network stack? Like we take everything that has been proven for the last 20 years and we put into a package and we connect it with the cloud, and you can do any type of architecture. There's actually no reason for you to build the stack from new. Maybe if you're a big company, 300 people, you want to own the whole stack. I mean, you maybe also build your own engine. I understand that, but like a small to medium company, like you should get multiplayer into a game somehow. That's how I feel.
Mm-hmm. There's definitely a dawn of indie teams, small to medium size, have been so empowered like the last decade. You know, the tools that you guys with Coherence and many other are like Unreal or everything else is becoming more accessible. They're free, right? All the way to basically to publishing on Steam or even Epic. You know, if you have an idea, it's doable, and the tools allow to do things that seems like a big undertaking for a small team, but now it's like 10 people can output something like a 6-person team used to do, right? And multiplayer is still like a big, it seems like it was a tool for the bigger dogs for a while, right? When you're developing a studio, multiplayer is not the first thing you think of. I was like, hey, let's take it slow. Let's do a single player experience, linear, if possible. Just trying to get this out of there. But like, you're right, it really cuts out a lot of the great ideas that these indie teams are known for. Their smaller teams are capable. You know, the innovation that we're routinely kind of outputting here, because of just a tool. Right. That is not available.
And another thing is also that what is also like the norm in development is that you build your single player first and then you slap on multiplayer.
Yeah.
And when you do it this way, you always get a certain type of multiplayer. And we actually had a customer that started out with us, and they started out single player. And I said to them, like, you have the option now to go in and already now, if your game surrounds around multiplayer, which it did, you just do all the iteration now. Start with multiplayer. Like, start finding out how you work together instead of doing your single player game and then putting on multiplayer afterwards. And you get a totally other game because you can think in a totally other way. You can iterate on the interactions rather than iterating on gameplay and then put some interactions on afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the benefits of making it much more accessible is not just to give these very small teams the ability to work with it, or individuals, but also in larger teams, you get more people. You know, with Unity, with Unreal, we now see much more overlap between what systems certain people are working on. Right? Designers, artists, coders, audio, like everybody is using the same, has an overlap in this engine and the tools connected to the engine. And we want to see that with multiplayer as well. You know, like who's the person who's gonna make sure that the interactions in multiplayer are fun? It's a designer, not a coder, right? So we want to give designers, also artists, the ability to make changes inside the multiplayer space and in interactions and all that kind of stuff. I think it's super important that this barrier to entry to everything multiplayer is lowered, so that we can actually end up seeing more creative and ballsy, products in the multiplayer space. I can say that, right?
Yeah. Ball out with all your terminology. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I mean, we all went through the pandemic, right? We saw a huge increase I think we're still dealing with the fallout of people trying to connect more than ever still. A lot of people are working remotely. I do see a slight resurgence with single player games, weirdly enough, the last, maybe it has to do with all the Resident Evil remakes, but there's this weird, past year and upcoming year of a lot of single player games. So, it's one of those, the pendulum swinging back a bit. But multiplayer is still dominant, right? In everybody's preference. It's just fun to play with friends. It's just more meaningful.
I mean, when I talk about new interactions, one of my both favorite games, but also best examples in this space is kind of Journey.
Yeah.
Journey is a single player game, but when you ask people about the experience, most people mention the friend they met in there. And people felt very connected to this game because they met a person and they follow they around, and they lost them at one point or whatever. There's this story with another person, and that's whenever I ask people about it, that's what they mention. And I feel right now we have single player, which is you go from A to Z, and that's the experience. Or you have multiplayer where you wait in a lobby and there's a countdown and you go and then you play, right? Yeah. I can also see there's hybrid game coming up where you do single player, but people have more tools to make somebody cross your path in some ways. You see people on the other side of the river. There could be just subtle ways of integrating that there's life in the world and you're not alone and you play with others. And I just feel that would make single player games so much stronger, and I don't feel that that needs to be hard to do that. Mm-hmm. Even though I love single player games, of course it's very, very deep to my heart that some of the best experiences I had single player games, but the games I return to are multiplayer games. They don't have the same deep story usually because it's different, but that's where I play with others. I play with my kids. I kind of, there's replayability in another way. And I feel those things could be combined.
Yeah, definitely. I think, playing with a friend through experience just multiplies the experience always. I'm guilty of playing Warzone, but even connecting with strangers, right? I have much more fun when I'm just playing with a friend on a squad. There's just an added element of let's play through this experience together and figure this out. I have to ask you guys, I mean, the buzz has gotten down a bit. Pandemic kind of amped up, all these crazy ideas that I feel died out, the blockchain, decentralized multiplayer, all these kind of crazy investor things. The Metaverse is still sticking around. I would love to kind of hear you guys' thoughts because it's kind of within the field. Have you guys were you guys from the programs I talk to, they always laugh about that and have really strong opinions against it. But I want to hear what your thoughts as this was happening. I'm guessing during the development of Coherence, how
this was happening a bit later. It was the last 2 years we've been talking about Metaverse, right? Yeah. And a lot of people are excited about it. And I mean, everybody, who doesn't like 3D environments where you can do all sorts of things? But we, as a company, very early on, you could see, people sharing. So most of you can imagine what the general opinion in the company is if you imagine that most of the people are the game developers inside of it. Mm-hmm. So we're not really wants to jump on the hype train when it comes to all that. But we do see, certain potential in certain areas. But I would not, use blockchain just for the sake of using blockchain or, the whole idea of liberating the items from the hands of the big publishers and stuff like that. Yeah, those are interesting ideas, but are they really things that players are hoping for? All sorts of things. So I don't think these trends dying down has not affected us at all. Basically, what do you think, Dino?
No, I mean, the need for deep human connection will never disappear, and that's what kind of what we are basing our business on, right? These trends came up. I mean, I never understood NFT, and I don't think. Yeah, I don't know.
It's definitely dead.
you know what people would say, like crypto bros would say, "Good luck being poor."
Yeah. No, but it's such. We have too little time for me to really dig deep into it. I just feel in general data. It was. We have the physical world, then the computers came and data showed us that you could have something and you can copy and you have double the amount of data and you can have free things. And there was the whole Napster thing and data was free and now we're trying with algorithms to limit data, and we're not really. The whole way NFT works technically is that you just put in a ledger that you own a link to some place on the internet, which don't really have any value. I don't know. I think will never really catch on, and I think when you use it in game, people that try to use them in games have misunderstood what games is about. I think a secure ledger could be a tool you can use for something. I don't think anybody has found out a good way to use it yet. But the people, like the games that surround that, I don't know. I don't think they will ever take off really. Not because they had NFTs. If they're also building a good game, they will take off.
I think even regardless if it does or doesn't, having been in the games industry for a while now, we see like the hardest thing to do is to get players interested in anything.
Yeah.
Right. This is hard. Like getting players, getting users into your product is a hard thing to do. And there's such competition for attention. We have, not only games, we have Netflix, we have HBO, we have all these networks. Everything is fighting over users' attention. And the motivation behind a lot of these initiatives has been elsewhere, right? It's been like, okay, I will build this system and then we will create some crappy interaction that we will hope people will come in and use it. And a lot of the motivational loops behind it have been financially motivated and not so much motivated by where the fun is. And I think, if we can get things that are fun and people really engage with and still use these technologies, yeah, why not? But so far, I haven't seen anything that would excite me very much, to be honest.
Yeah, from everyone I talked to, especially engineers, like all that tech during the pandemic, they weren't solving a problem we were trying to solve. They were trying to just wedge into investor situations. There was like a good period that I was talking to a bunch of people, and they're like, it's hard to sell an idea without like jamming those things in. It's just the buzzword right now around Silicon Valley, right? Yeah. Thankfully, it's died down by its own death. I don't think anyone has talked about it. There's a lot of people's feet in their own mouth about it. And to me, it was good riddance. It was fun. Maybe it gave birth. I think the most optimistic thing I've heard about is that it made spawn like another idea that could be useful, right? That it was more a transitional thing, but I haven't really heard much else about it since then. I do want to ask this. This is kind of like the focus this year on the podcast, it's affecting anyone. I mean, colleagues of your own discipline created AI related tools this year. I always want to hear you guys' opinion. I mean, programmers for the longest time, we always, as artists, we were always like, we don't need you, or programmers are like coming out with Minecraft. It's like, we don't need artists. And then literally it created a tool where, I think it's one of the biggest crisis, however you want to look at it, a benefit crisis in game development tools and just game development overall. I would love to kind of hear you guys' thoughts on, as you guys are watching this, like, what are you thinking will transpire as tool creators, how you think this is going to be useful or not.
Go ahead today.
No, you go ahead.
Okay.
It's a touchy subject.
Last time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. No, I see great potential in AI.
Yeah.
And I say that, and then I see the first 5 game that implements AI in an annoying way.
Yeah.
Where they generate text and do very boring dungeons based on AI and so on.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's 100%. I think AI is here to stay. It's in another ballpark, but we still need to figure out how to use it. And I don't think it will replace. I need to watch now. It will replace some people's work, for sure. I don't think it will replace the good.
It's definitely going to replace a lot of jobs.
I don't think the good games will get better.
Yeah,
I think the bad games will get worse.
Yes.
Can I say that?
Yeah.
And there'll be more of them. There'll be more worse games, but the really good games will still be crafted by humans for a while.
Yeah.
I think it's certainly disruptive. If I think about, our work, if you think about coding, if you think about art, if you think about design, even sound design, like things like that, a lot of the more boring work can certainly be accelerated.
Yeah.
People can also get inspiration much faster.
Yeah.
I think, I feel for I see a lot of artists complaining about, these models basically sucking all the original art and rehashing it, right? Yeah, I feel for those. I think if there's a way to solve that, we should definitely try to solve that as well, address it in some way. But in general, I think it's accelerating creativity is where I see this going. Even in coding, I can see, you can ask ChatGPT today to write you a method in a specific programming language to solve a specific thing. You have 2 arrays, pair them or align them based on, the nearest possible value, write the algorithm. And then you can basically copy paste that into your code. Granted, very often it still doesn't work because there's certain limitations there, but this is, a stepping stone.
Yeah.
And I think where they're going to see a lot of challenges and are seeing a lot of challenges already is education. How do you make sure that students are actually going through the process and learning something along the way, and not just, going to the next level of abstraction?
Yeah.
We still, I think as humans, we need to remain capable of doing things on our own.
Yeah.
If we have no electricity, for instance. But I think in general, it's a big step forward. It's like, getting those beefy calculators back in the day in school, but 100 times that.
Yeah, I think the gap definitely will widen between the efficient and the lazy. I really do feel the tools that come out will empower for those who are really good at creatively outputting their ideas. Mm-hmm. And then the lazy people are just not going to edit or subtly change anything that the computer or AI model is giving them, both for art or ChatGPT. So there's definitely, I think, I do feel the vigilant people who are hardworking will definitely bear the fruits of all these AI models that accelerate, what they're trying to share with the world. There's definitely a disruption. There's definitely a lot of jobs, like he said. I think that were repetitive. It's gonna be a race. There is a crisis with teacher. I have college friends that are teachers in colleges, and students just straight up like bragging about how they're getting hundreds for everything, right? The educational system needs to pause, in my opinion, to kind of combat why and justify why is it even necessary to go to college at this point or pay for education. The only
maybe you can send the same thing back to ChatGPT and ask, did you
and
write
as like come up with a curriculum? That actually, the only time the Khan Academy, I don't know, you guys familiar with that? It's like an online educational system. It's basically
Khan Academy for cons or
KHAN from
okay.
From kindergarten to college courses. It's an affordable way for worldwide students to go online and learn these subjects that people pay a lot of money for. They're integrating ChatGPT, and the way they're doing it is kind of like an AI tutor, right? So instead of if you ask, give me the answer to this, it walks you through of solving these abstraction as if like a personalized 24/7 tutor. So like teachers are definitely gonna have to combat against that. But it was the first time, I think, relatively pretty quickly, I saw like, now this is someone who sees what's going on and is accelerating and maximizing, which pretty much is a smaller team, right? They're not like a huge university or anything. I think they're like a nonprofit. Yeah.
As an individual, you have to decide, do I want to use this tool to better myself and become a better version of myself, or do I want to cheat and not become better and just let it replace me? And I think you have that choice still. Maybe at one point you don't have that choice, but you still have that choice to use it as a tool instead of just make it deliver something and that you learned nothing. You just deliver that and you get a good grade. And you come out learning nothing. I think that's what's going to define who's going to go above or below like that line of being, what's it called? If the people who does the second thing come out and get a job, then ChatGPT will actually be better than them doing their job.
Yeah. It's I love that. Similar to what you said about Khan Academy. Sorry, I didn't understand you earlier. About the name, but people are using ChatGPT to practice for job interviews. So they make ChatGPT act as a marketing director is interviewing me for this and this job, and just like the company is doing this, and then getting questions. And I think that that's an example of how it can be really, really helpful. And actually improve your knowledge, improve your readiness, improve your efficiency, kind of. But I agree with you that the lazy are gonna get lazier, to be honest. And there's certainly a risk of that. But that's the case with every technology. People thought that the newspaper and radio would ruin humanity, right?
Yeah. I talked to a colleague from industry recently, and he said, a lot of his work is emails and documents. And he said, after ChatGPT, I've decided I will never write a first draft of anything anymore. Yeah. And that improved my efficiency. And I kind of thought about starting that and seeing how it works. I've tried it a bit, and sometimes what ChatGPT writes leads me down a path I don't want to go down and limits my thoughts sometimes. Yeah. But I can see if there's some standard stuff, standard legal documents, standard emails that you could that are longer. you can get ChatGPT to just come up with the first revision, and maybe many times it's okay. And for your productivity to stuff doesn't matter, maybe that's fine, just to save time.
Yeah. I'm thinking, to kind of circle back to what you were talking about at the beginning is like, when you're building up a studio, you're just trying to figure out what's my value that is unique, right? And concentrating on that. And I think people individually are starting to find that out in their personal life, like using ChatGPT as a personal assistant, but also like, in Midjourney or all these AI art prompt machines, right? Like, where do I uniquely fit into this picture, and spend less time doing, the laborious stuff, where I think the idea of putting 10,000 hours into something is quickly dying to an extent. And it needs to be reshaped, or that guy needs to come up with a new book to update. But I think overall it's definitely an evolution of how we want to spend our time, and force people to not just get by. There was one alarming thing that I saw, and this is where I feel AI is going to help us kind of face that dilemma better, is that, this new generation, Gen Z in particular, I saw an article how parents are emphasizing less on success, meaning like, hey, we don't want our kid to be Jeff Bezos or work that hard. Like, they should, I mean, to a certain degree, I agree, but I feel like they're just going in the wrong direction, where happiness at whatever you're doing should be key. Like working at, Amazon, no hate on Amazon, or like, all these kind of like less skilled jobs, right? That doesn't need a diploma or anything, is like emphasizing that those are fine as long as you're happy. But the reality is they're pushing their kids in these industries that they're being replaced by robots and AI. It's like, and we're seeing it across the board that these jobs are being laid off every quarter to the 10,000. But this is like the result of the pandemic too. A lot of people are coming out of it prioritizing happiness over hard work and skill, right? Which I feel is this is not the time to be doing that with all this new tech coming out. Yeah. So I
also feel it's hard to give advice to everybody.
Yeah.
You cannot give a general advice because, there will be some people replaced by this. I can give advice to that, I don't know, 10-20% that want to stay beyond the curve, and use this AI, like use AIs to better yourself and just be a better version of yourself. And there'll always be need for humans. But I don't know if will there be need for all humans?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ChatGPT disagrees in the chat.
We have to talk. What's it called? Speak well about ChatGPT, because if this gets transcribed, and Skynet takes over, we want to be on
their
the
good
right side.
Big fan, ChatGPT.
Yeah, big fan.
Long time fan. But I think also, if you want to get slightly political, I think having a strong social system, some kind of safety net, can help people adapt if times change and jobs change and stuff like that. Because certainly people can adapt, but they need time to find, what is it where is the unique value that you can keep adding in general.
Fantastic. So we're about an hour. Right? I do want to have one more question before I kind of hand over the mic. We're talking about advice, right? What advice do you have for aspiring game developers out there who are trying to get in, might be an indie developer, looking to expand, anything? What would you say? Just kind of point them in the right direction in this, trying, exciting time?
I would say keep your first project simple and focus on what makes you unique, you yourself unique, and just double down on that. Simple, don't overscope, and try to get it out. I think one of the hardest things in the games industry is finishing things. All of us have started a million different things and never finished them. So I would focus on that. Definitely.
I could not say it better. That was actually what I thought. Scope and focus on what you're good at. I mean, there's so many generalists. I mean, if you're a generalist, you maybe become the CEO, but no, I think it's really important just to always like dig deep, like whatever you're good at, just dig deep in that, and scope, especially for your first project. I mean, the first project is always it is how can I say this without repeating you today? Whatever today said.
Well, that sums up our time. I want to, kind of at this point hand over the mic to kind of, if you guys can point the listeners how they can find you, learn more about you guys, about the project you guys are working on. This is the time for you guys to kind of freely talk about that, and I shut up. So go ahead.
Do you want to go today?
Sure. So Coherence is live right now. You can go to coherence.io, and sign up for a free account. You can use it to make your first or second or 10th multiplayer game. It is definitely the easiest way to make multiplayer games, but also a very powerful make multiplayer games. In June, we're also planning our 1.0 release, which will come with a lot of exciting new stuff. So Coherence is not only a network engine and an SDK, but also a managed hosting solution with automatic scaling. Of course, we have free plans, we have paid plans for that. But in June, we're even releasing a self-hosted plan where you pay nothing for your game. And you'll be able to self-host your game and run it as much as you want. One important thing to mention there is that the way most indie game developers go about multiplayer games is that in the beginning you're afraid of all the costs associated with cloud hosting. So imagine you have a game like Deep Rock Galactic. I even have let me show you to plug them. I just got today this board game from Deep Rock Galactic, which is pretty cool. So Deep Rock Galactic is a game that has self-hosted multiplayer. It means that when we're playing together, one of us is hosting all the data for everything we do, all our progress and everything. But we can never invite more than a certain number of people. But let's say you launch your game in that model, and you don't have any online system, you're not paying for servers or anything, and then the game, and you have no risk launching it like that, and the game takes off, and you want, now you finally have money to expand it, and then you can seamlessly transition from this self-hosted model to a managed model where you can have hundreds of players in the game. A few years go by and this game is now old. They don't want to support it anymore, but there's some, diehard fans that still want to play it online, and you can transition back to the self-hosted model. So we give developers all the control. We give developers all complete freedom to decide, how they want to manage their game projects. We're going to have a bunch of other exciting features like floating origin, where you're going to be able to simulate worlds, from here to Mars with a millimeter precision. We have Unreal support on our roadmap right now. Unity is our primary engine that we support. And if you go to coherence.io, you will also find a video that we made that shows you how you can take a single player game and make it multiplayer in less than 5 minutes.
Awesome, man. This is exciting. On behalf of all the listeners, but on behalf of the prospects of indie developers that want to turn their game into multiplayer. I want to thank you guys for coming on. It was awesome learning from you guys' experience, opinions about what's going on. Thank you. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks for having us, Brendan.
Right, anytime.
All right. See you guys all next week.